Good evening, everybody. My name is Xavier Whaley, and I want to present to y'all my family, as I like to call them, the Whaley Doucet connection. Now, I've gone through I gone through some painstakingly moments trying to find some information this, uh, about this family of mine because I have such a big family. Trying to figure out like where my family began, and what life was like for them. So with that, let's get started. So the first thing I want to do is I want to talk about my mom's side of the family, which is which pretty much is the Thompson slash Coleman slash DeWalt slash Doucet family, and her family begins in 1825 with my great grandfather Thomas Thompson, who was born in about 1825. Um, he was married. Eventually got married to Asher Thompson in about 1865. They were born in they lived in Alabama, and then they eventually moved to Texas, which is pretty much where my family got started. If you think about it, at least on my mom's side, they got started in Texas, and then as the family moves along, once you get into the 20th century, you know, I have my great grandfather Curtis Jr. Coleman, who was born in 1901 in Mount Enterprise, Texas. That's in Rusk County, and that's about like a 3 hour drive from Houston. So he was born there, and hold on, let me see something. And I believe great great grandfather Curtis. He was the parents of Jesse Coleman and Elila Nickerson, born in 1901, and obviously in Texas in 1901. I tried to find some pictures of Texas in the 1900s, but I couldn't. So I had a little bit difficulty with that. But other than that, it was pretty much a very tough time for African Americans and whatnot to really be rummaging around or to be free, because slavery was, well, not really slavery, but racism was still big during this time. And the thing is, living in the South where racism was a really big thing. I had to figure it was tough my my great great grandfather to deal with. So one thing I didn't know about my great great grandfather was that he actually was about to be a part of the army. I know I have some family members who were part of the army, but I never knew that he was going to be a part of the army. And the family member that I'm gonna talk to, I will get to in just a few minutes. But when I was looking on Ancestry, which or Heritage Quest, which then led me to Ancestry, I never knew. I was looking at some pictures. I never knew that grandpa Curtis was going to join the army. So I thought that was a pretty cool thing. Excuse me. Another 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 one of my relatives on my mom's side who actually did join the army, and I've been hearing about his stories, for years. Was my grandfather Donald DeWalt, who was actually married to my grandmother, Versi Mae DeWalt. They were married in 1983. Oh, well, first let me give you Papa Donald's information. He was born in 1947. That's when racial segregation was still at its peak during those times, especially down here. Like I said, especially down here in Texas, it may have not been as rough as it was in Alabama, but it was still pretty rough here, down here in Texas. And actually, um, Papa Donald he was actually able to make a pretty good living for himself. He he was born he was born here in Houston, and he married my grandmother, like I mentioned, Versi Mae DeWalt on in 1983. A little information about my grandmother Versi. She was born in 1949, a couple of years later, and she had she had only one brother, biologically. She was married three times. First to Lewis Williams in 1967. She was actually married. She actually had double marriages. First to Archie Lewis, and then to my grandpa Oscar Calvin. And she divorced from my grandpa Calvin in 1976, and then Lewis in 79, before marrying my Papa Don in 1983. And from there, she had three daughters. Their names are Arnitra Whaley Doucet, who by the way is my mother, and my two aunts, Katrina St. Julian, Katrina Rochelle St. Julian, and the youngest, Donika Hicks in 1981. So and through those other three, I have a lot of cousins on my mom's side that I thoroughly enjoy, still to this day. And I feel, you know, I never knew that I had a big family on my mom's side, because I always thought I had a big family on my dad's side, because my dad's side always get to always hear about. And speaking of my dad's side, that's where I'm gonna transition to transition to next. My dad's side, most of my dad's side is from Louisiana, and boy, it all started back in the 1900s, when Louisiana was really dealing with with like the Ku Klux Klan back in the 1900s. And I'm surprised that my ancestors were able to survive all the tragedy towards African Americans. And I really credit and I, I really also credit my mother, for teaching me about my ancestors, because had I not known about all these people, I would have never known. I always would have thought that life was always good for everybody in my family, going back to the 1800s, when in reality it wasn't. I had to soon learn that. So when my dad's side of the family starts. Hold on, trying can't even trying to pull them up. So my dad's side of the family starts back in the 18, also in the 1800s. Like I said, in the 1900s, with the Spearman family, and then and then it transitions into the Whaley family with Floyd Whaley being my great great grandfather, who then who then who then with his wife gave birth to Corday. I mean, gave birth to my great grandfather, Lawyer Whaley, who I never got to obviously meet in person, but I've heard some good things about him. And that's where and and between my great grandfather, Lawyer, and great grandmother, Maddie, came my grandfather, and 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 Harry Whaley, as he was born in 1939 in Louisiana. Oh, and by the way, most of my most of my family, one of my early ancestors on my dad's side, they were born in the fields in Rouge, Louisiana. Obviously, so obviously it was kind of a tough time, living for them. And I've always heard stories about how they were forced to pick cotton. I know I shouldn't really talk about it, but it was just a harsh reality. And by the way, my great grandfather, the lawyer, he had a lot of siblings. In fact, he had about 12 of them, and unfortunately, 10 of them have passed away. The most recent was Tommy Whaley. So the only siblings that he has living are my uncle Levi and auntie and Titi Willie. They still both reside. They were born and they still both reside in Louisiana. By the way, and then my granddaddy, he was married to my grandmother Hazel Spearman, who I unfortunately could say that never ever got to I never ever had the chance to meet her in person because she died 2 years before I was born. I couldn't believe when I first when I first looked at my ancestry, because I was born in 2003. My grandma Hazel died in 2001, and on Halloween of 2001, may I add. So that was kind of tough for me to kind of stomach, if you will. And here's a picture of my grandmother Hazel here with my granddaddy. They look so good together. All and when I look at the picture of Grandma Hazel, I realized that she looks like one of her daughters, my auntie Hownett Renee Whaley. She looks just like her. I couldn't find a picture of my Titi Renee, but they have a striking resemblance of one another. And my dad, and then she, and of course my dad, he's the oldest of the two. He was born in 1972. My Titi Renee was born in about 1978. They're both born in Louisiana, and by night and right about night. And speaking of my dad, right about 19 right about 1993, he made the move. He made the move to come to Houston. Well, first he lived in Chicago from about 1993 to 2001, and during that time he was married to Saritha Nikki Davis while in Chicago, and they gave birth to one son, which just so happened to be which just so happened to be my brother. His name is Trent Jamal Whaley in 1996 at the age of 20. And that was at the age of 24. Then came 2001 after the death of Grandma Hazel. He moved down to Houston where he married my mother Arnitra, in '01. Lived in Houston for 6 years, and of course during this time, she, my mom gave birth to me in 2000 on March the 18th of 2003. A few things that I didn't know about my family, especially on my dad's side. I never knew that my granddaddy worked at a dealership for dang near 40 some years until he finally decided to retire. You see the you see the Chevrolet symbol right here. That's a dealership he works at. It's called Gentile Chevrolet, located in Rayville, Louisiana. He worked there from 40, about like 42 years, from about, let's say, I want to say 1981 to about last year in 2023. He finally decided to retire because, at, excuse me, at his current age, he's 85 years old right now. He finally decided that it was time to, hang it up, and that he wanted to spend some more time, with his family and such, because he knows that he doesn't have a lot of time on this earth. And I respect him for it because nowadays I try to, I try to go to Louisiana to spend as much time as I can with with my grandfather, because I feel like many people on our side or on my dad's side of the family they're really passing away really quickly. So that's my family tree. I want to thank y'all for being attentive, and that's just a little something, a little information about my family.